Hi, this is Marin with my second video for my project for the MediaArtsHistories program. And this time around, I'm going to start with the actual comic book. So the first thing I did is I wrote down the story here, my story notes. I broke it down into individual panels. And what I'll do now is I'll draw up a sketch of the panels to see whether all of my story points actually fit within the 4 pages that I've planned. And then I will break down which characters and which backgrounds I need for the story. And then I'll start drawing the individual characters. I'll draw them individually and then composite them together on the computer after I scan them in, obviously. So what I do is I draw everything on paper. So I have my drawing board here, I've got my drawing tools here, and I'll kick it off. I draw a grid of panels for 4 pages. Based on the story in my notes, I start filling a description into every panel. I don't want to spoil the actual comic by revealing the plot. I also won't describe the creative process leading up to the story, but you can rest assured that it is very unspectacular. So it was good that I sketched out the story first on a panel grid, because I realized that I'm 2 panels short, and I took a note of this. I'll take this into consideration when compositing the page on the computer. And now that I've listed all of the characters and the background components, I can start drawing them. I sketched the figure with a technical pencil, working my way from basic shapes to a tight pencil sketch. Then I clean up the contours with a technical pen. I erase the pencil lines, and with a black marker or brush pen, I then reinforce some of the lines and fill in the blacks where they are needed. This particular story needs 4 characters, 2 backgrounds, mostly consisting of trees, and a mouse and an elephant. It is set outdoors, right in front of a forest. Since the story is based on a slightly political joke, I want to avoid aggravating anyone, so I will set the story in a fantasy world. My plan is to draw the individual figures and the components of the backgrounds. Once I scan them, I will then color them on the Atari ST and manually render out all the details in the Pixelart. This will give me flexibility to combine panels any way I like, and it saves time because I will reuse the same figure on multiple panels with only slight variations. The same is true for the backgrounds. I can repeat the backgrounds and overlay the relevant characters. And here are the drawings of the individual components. I scanned them on my Mac and then converted them into an old graphics format called IFF that was first introduced on the Commodore Amiga. I saved the converted images onto an SD card, and I then transferred them onto the Atari ST using the UltraSatan. Now it is only a matter of converting them into the right format on the Atari ST and importing them into the Paint application I want to use for the finished pixel art. After scanning in the pages and converting them to the right format for the Atari ST, I realized that this little guy won't fit in the resolution, which is good. I'll redraw him. I was going for an alien shape, and I'll have to think of one that is less tall so that it fits into the allotted resolution and the size I've available. So now I have scanned all of the component images and I've converted them and moved them over onto the Atari ST. I will make one panel, I will pixel one panel in all details just to show where we are heading. This panel might end up in the actual finished product, in the finished comic, but the main purpose here is to get a feel for the palette, for the resolution, and also for the tools that I'll use. I want to be mindful of the limitations of the Atari Mega ST. This retro computer was introduced in 1991. It is based on the original Atari ST from 1985 and shares most of its limitations. In the color graphics mode that I will be using, the Atari ST can display a resolution of 320 by 200 pixels with 16 colors on screen at the same time. I have to mention that smart programmers, particularly those from the demo scene, have managed to overcome many of these limitations. The result of this project will be a color comic with the original limitations of the Atari Mega ST in place at a resolution of 320 by 200 with 16 colors on screen at the same time. The paint program I use is NeoChrome, first introduced in 1985 by the Atari Corporation, but updated years later by enthusiasts from the demo scene. I have chosen a 16 color palette for its great deal of flexibility while still allowing for color ramps and gradients. This palette was conceived by Dawnbringer, one of the retro pixel artists on Pixeljoint. On the Mega ST, these colors can be selected from an overall available color palette of 4096 colors. The process of pixeling every single detail is quite time-consuming and tedious. That being said, it put me in a trance-like state of complete focus. I worked my way through to a finished proof of concept using different techniques to overcome the color limitations and the low resolution. I used dithering for areas of color transitions, and I manually anti-aliased the pixels that made up curves to offset the low resolution. The elephant that I drew is a pivotal character in the story. I mainly focused on getting the colors right and making sure that the lines are cleaned up. The background will most likely be different in the final comic than it is here in the proof of concept. This concludes the second video of my series. I have sketched out the story, created the characters, and have made a proof of concept that the pixel art will work. In the next video, we're going to actually look at how the pixeling will proceed. Thank you very much. Goodbye.